Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.
Welcome again to another edition of Overtime with Dr. Michael Jacobs and our special guest today, Barry Weinberg. Again, a trainer to the stars, as you heard on our podcast with Jerry Coleman and Mike Bordick. Great to have you guys here. Let me start this right away. You guys know each other. You're familiar with each other's work. Yeah. Explain to me a little bit about the similarities between a trainer and a physician to the team. And I'll start with you, Dr. Jacobs. What is that relationship? Do you guys, do you talk, do you observe, and do you relate stories? How does that work?
It's funny. I had lunch the other day with a West Point graduate who'd been through Vietnam and one of the Gulf Wars. And what he said about leading men in combat was just like the way I reviewed the trainers. He said, the first lieutenants come out of West Point and they're the officers, but they better do what the staff sergeants say because they actually know what's going on and how to stay alive.
Right.
I came in, Dr. Silverstein kind of talked me into doing this job. I had no interest in doing it. Somehow Mr. Angelos asked me to do it. He called me up, and as I said, I hung up on him the first time because I thought it was a joke. And then he calls me back and says, no, I want you to go see Rafi, and my people have picked you. And I talked to Chick, and Chick said, it's common sense, be a good doctor, and listen to Richie. Okay, so I have to say particularly the first 5 or 6 years, something would happen, and it was, Richie, what do you want to do? And Richie was a Hall of Famer like you are, Barry, and he knew from experience, from hands-on, and we collaborated, and I can't ever remember overruling him. I do remember a couple times, whether it was to inject somebody maybe or not to inject them, nothing earth-shattering. And I said, well, kind of, Richie, maybe we should inject them. And Richie say in his professional way, well, you're the doc. If that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do. I said, I'll tell you what, Richie, let's not inject them. Let's do what you want to do and go forward. And Pat Gillick would come down in a time when baseball was really baseball and would cruise through the room and say to Richard and me, well, how long is he out? When's he coming back? We give him a 30-second rundown, one of us. He said, just let me know when he's ready to come back and we'll deal with it. We didn't have Zoom meetings over every time somebody burped. And it was great. But all I really did there, whether it was Brian Ebel, who's a Hall of Famer, whether it was Richie, it was my job to listen to their experience, and we worked totally collaboratively. And if you don't do that with a high-level trainer, you're an idiot, because they know more about what I do. And there was no way I was going to tell them how to change the ramp up for a pitcher who was coming down, soft toss, hard toss, long toss, short toss. It was my job to listen to Richie or Ebel or Pat Wesley or Mark if they were away, and just integrate it. And I think one of the reasons we had so few Tommy Johns and we had so few, I can't think of any player complaints we had, is because we just listened to everybody. And it was not like I know everything, because I knew essentially nothing. And
well,
as you know,
let me jump in there and ask you that. When you say, when a guy continually gets injured, does ownership come down to you guys and say, what the hell's going on? How come this guy? And some guys, I played ball with a guy once, and he was always getting injured. He went to a major league game and got hit by a foul ball. And he was one of these guys. Are there guys that just seem like to have this predilection to injury? Do you see that, Barry?
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know if you call it bad luck or choose the right parents, wrong parents. But they're just in the way of something. Like you said, he's a guy that it's in the way of a ball or in the way of a foul ball. But Doc, I want to, before I forget, the big word that you just used was listened. There's a big difference in listening and hearing. Okay, I used to. Tony always asked me at the end of a game that was already determined, whether we were up or down 6 or 7 runs, he would say, go ask McGuire if he wants his last at bat in the 8th or 9th inning. And I go up to Mark and said, Mark, do you want your last at bat? And he'd go, yeah, I do. I said, okay. So I said, Tony, he wants his last at bat. Same situation a week later, up, down 6, 7 runs. Go ask Mark if he wants his last at bat. And Mark would say, Yeah, I sure do. Whatever you guys think. As soon as he said that, I knew Mark did not want his at bat. So I went to Tony, said he doesn't want it. And he said, okay, Mark, I'm pinch hitting something for you. And as Mark walked past me, he'd give me a wink. You know what I mean? So it's listening and hearing people, what they're saying. Like you said, you just, when you asked Richie a question, he gave you an answer, but you listened to what he said. You just didn't hear his answer. You know what I mean? And then you took that listening skill and made it made it into action. Yeah, like you didn't inject, or you didn't. I had a wonderful relationship with George Paletta. I'm sure you know Dr. Paletta.
He's a star, by the way.
Huh?
He's a real star.
He's unbelievable because he communicates, and we still talk probably once a week, and I'm not even involved, but no, it was so easy because first of all, he was smart, and I used to love to learn from him, and I would make a point if I didn't know something to study something on, you know what I mean, and see if I can impress him, which I couldn't, but no, but he was so good at communicating with me, and we coordinated our efforts, and we didn't have these problems. You never had one against the other. Or the doctor said I should do this, and I said no, I shouldn't. No, we knew this beforehand. Went into your preparation and the way you speak to a player is paramount to how you approach him. Because as long as he's got my back and I got his back, and he says something to the player comes back to me, and I said, oh no, he's right, right. And when you get that coordination, I know Richie real well, and I admire Richie and adore him, and he's as good as it gets, and evil. You had wonderful trainers there. I even got, I don't know if you knew Ralph Salvon.
I did not know Ralph, but the only consistency during the Angelos era was we went from Salvon to Richie to Ebel, and we never had any. Everybody on the training side had the same plan, and it was seamless. And all I had to do was just listen to everybody, talk to the players. And the players, we had never complained because they realized that the doc, wasn't trying to operate on them to make my name. They knew Richie just wanted to do what was best for them. From day one, I sent almost all my Tommy Johns out to Lou Yoakum or Andrew, not because I didn't know how to do them, but I said, geez, whether you're a minor leaguer or a major leaguer, this is your career. The guy who's done 500 of these is going to have a better feel than me who's done 40 of them. And the players no longer were afraid to tell us stuff because they knew I wasn't going to try to corner them to let us do the surgery. And Richie, of course, guided everybody with Brian or with Pat. And so it was an incredible deal. The only problem we had is Mr. Angelos, who never really played sports, didn't really think playing baseball was a big deal. He, as one of the other docs said, he should have been a football doc where you play your 15, 16 games. You may be down by 50 points, but you're out there lying on your shield. And if they got to carry you off, Mr. Angelos had that go die on the field. And like I said before, I remember Davey, who was great, Johnson. I was in the hall talking to him, and Boomer Wells came by, and Dave said, Boomer, my bullpen's dead. I need 8 innings out of you. And Boomer goes, Doc, Davey, no problem. He went out there. I think we lost 4-3 or 3-2. He gave Davey his 8 innings. And I remember talking to Angelos because he called me after. He wanted to start running the bullpen out there after the 3rd inning, And the fact of the matter is you got to have the manager who listens to the players. And I was so fortunate to have the best, yourself included, some of the best trainers in baseball. We didn't trade trainers. And as we said, in the 40 years of the Orioles, it's been Salvon, Richie, and Ebel. I mean, that's an incredible story, isn't it, Barry?
Yeah, but what the other thing is too is that you keep going back to list. I guarantee if a player came into explain to what you had before you put your hands on him, you knew exactly what it was because you listened to what, right? You had that experience.
You listened to him, you talked to Richie, you almost knew for sure what it was.
Right.
The thing that makes me laugh, Barry, it's like analytics are necessary but way overrated. Sports medicine, when I started medical school in 75, sports medicine was for the morons who couldn't do anything else, okay? At Columbia College, there were, of our class of elite medical students, there were 10 guys in the equivalent of Phi Beta Kappa, and 8 of us went into orthopedics. And the dean of Columbia called us in and said, "What are you guys doing? We're not here to train stupid orthopedists. We're here to train heart surgeons and brain surgeons." And today, sports medicine is the hottest ticket out there,
Right.
I think, after ophthalmology. And it's gotten overrated because I listened to some of the Zoom calls we had with Mike Elias, who's kind of an internet age GM. And I keep laughing, going, he can think all he wants, but nothing's changed since I started in '93. We can rest him, give him therapy, or give him a cortisone shot, or operate on him. And since we're not operating on him, most of them, it's rest him and give him a shot. For all of their analytics, it's rest him or give him a shot. Nothing else has really changed, Barry. It's incredible.
Barry, but you're listening to you and talking to Bordy. I can tell that the relationships these guys have with you two, I mean, you're the guys that keep them making a living. Really. I mean, because like Bordy was worried about going back out there and having a short stuff, the Wally Pipp thing, right?
Yeah.
And these guys, I know that everybody's always worried about, trying to continue to play this game that they love so much. And with the injuries coming along, I can see why you guys get these relationships with them. And, you over the years keep in touch because managers have to win games. You're trying to get these guys back out there just to be able to continue to play the game they grew up playing. And I think that's a really remarkable relationship you have. And what you said to Bordy about the intangible, I'm sure we've seen it in other players before.
Yeah.
I always tell people, like, when I say that, I say, to me, the most intangible thing I've ever seen in a major league game was Jeter's the flip. Right. And I know Bordy, since it was against Oakland, probably isn't that crazy about it, but he was the kind of guy that just, he was the guy that hit the ball that Jeffrey Mayer grabbed. Right. I mean, there's some people that are just around the game that change the game and you can't define it. You guys probably see it in their eyes in the training room or, when they're trying to get back out there, you probably see them at their most vulnerable,
I have an expression. Sometimes you can't see the picture because you're within the frame.
Yeah.
Very rarely do we ever step outside the picture and understand the magnitude of what we do, the importance and the effect we have on other people because we're just doing it. It goes fast by you and we're involved in it. And, you look back and, it's like when I had a serious injury, a guy, you run out on the field, you get an ambulance, and at the end you go, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Because all you're doing is reacting to the moment, and say, oh, Barry, you were great. I almost didn't remember what, the process of what you did because it just clicked in that you have to do this. But I was going to tell you one story when I started with Oakland with St. Louis in 1998. Tony La Russa, the manager, comes to me and says, look, I have to keep McGuire healthy.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So I sat down and took the schedule. And if you look at the schedule, you have certain off days. I said, if you don't play Mark more than 6 games in a row, that's the most he can play in a row is 6 games. He'll only have 11 days off. He'll play 151 games for you. You're kidding. In other words, I have a theory, and Doc, it's kind of crazy. Never rest a guy when he's tired. Always rest a guy when he feels good. Because if he feels good on Wednesday and you give him Thursday off, guess what? He's going to feel good on Friday. But if you wait to the point where he's exhausted on Thursday and you give him Friday off, he may still not be ready on Saturday. And it's going to compound the problem. But anyways, so I said, give him 11 days off. So we come to August, and Tony's been great. Give him, every time there's a day off, but then in between like 12 game spans, he'd take 1 day. So he'd give him play 5 games, have a day off, play 5 or 6 more games. Anyways, so we're at home, played 7 straight games at home. He has to play home games. Then we go to Pittsburgh, which was a division rival. 3 games. Tony wanted to play them all 3. So that's 10 straight. So we're going to Philadelphia for the weekend. And I said, Skipper, you got to give him Friday off. He says, Barry, we're facing Schilling on Friday. I can't rest Mark. It doesn't look good. I said, okay. Take Saturday. He said, Barry, Saturday's a game of the week. I cannot rest Mark on a national television game of the week when it's in August going for 70. He's going for a record home run, right? I said, all right. He said, I'll give him Sunday off. I said, okay, it's a deal. So I'll give him Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday off if you want, but I got to play, you know. So, okay. So Saturday, Mark hits 3 home runs. Okay. As we're walking out the field to high five, I feel a little tug at my jersey. It's Tony. He looks at me, goes, "You tell the press why he's not playing tomorrow." No.
Well,
He didn't play. If you look up the records, he didn't play, and we won. So, but anyway.
I got to end this by saying that
Go.
that every athlete I've ever talked to describes you guys as unsung heroes of their career. You're the people that, and not just physically, it's psychologically too, because you understand, because you've seen so many injuries. You've seen people try to get back out to the field. And I just think it's great. I'm really think that people are love to hear this part of the game that they don't normally hear about. And thank you so much, Barry, for being here.
You know what? In the book, Joe Buck writes in the fort, it says, you know, the athletic trainer, the doc, it's an interesting position. You're like the person's hairdresser and bartender.
You know, just to add on that, I think the key role you guys play, particularly the teams that the Dodgers, you guys have continual stability at that position, is when a player, particularly a pitcher, is starting to near either surgery or the end, they kind of believe the doc. But when I would say, you know, I think you ought to think about surgery, the guy they go to say, do I really need the surgery, is the trainer. And then when the doc says, well, I think you should go to this doctor or that doctor, I think they go to you guys, Barry, and say, is that the right doctor for me? And I think that trust is essential in why the continuity of the trainers is so important. And you, Richie, Ebel, you're the very, very best. And we have the highest regard for you.
Oh, thanks. You know, that and it comes down to trust. I trust your opinion. I trust your diagnosis. I hope you trust my evaluation, but then I would trust your diagnosis. And at the same time, you know, like any profession, if you can't trust the people you're working for, then guess what? You're not going to get very far.
Well,
the problem is experience is worth something. And for 30 years of doing it, you actually know something. And sometimes some of these analytics guys, they just run to the youngest, hottest doc out there because they buy the new technology over experience. Yeah. And they'll learn the hard way about that.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, that again, people that are listening to this that have played at any level understand what you guys bring to the game. I think it's great. Thank you so much for your time, as always, Doc and Barry. Good to see you, my friend, and hope to see you again real soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Anytime.
Thank you.
Do you know who I am? I'm kind of a big deal.